Hello and welcome to my CSC209 midpoint walkthrough. So today we're going to be going over the mysh program that we are currently making in this course. So we're going to start with a quick little compile. So if we look to the left here, we can see that we don't actually have any .o files as I took them out, so we are just going to quickly call make, and that is going to give us a nice little compile. And as you can see, there's no errors. We're going to go ahead and run. Whoa, my apologies, I fat fingered a button and don't know what that did. Okay, so we are going to run the shell. As you can see, if we echo hi, we get hi back, and we're going to start by just demonstrating that our variable assignment and variable reassignment and variable assignment with the variable expansion works. So we're going to make a nice little variable called hi, and we're going to set it to hello. So if we echo this variable using our $sign, we can see we get hello back. So that shows that our variable works. And now we are going to reassign our variable, and we're going to say hi now equals ah. So if we do that, and we go ahead and echo. Oh, my apologies. I made a little mistake there, a little brain fart. Whoops. If we go ahead and we echo hi, not ah, we see we get back. And as we can see, if we have an undefined variable, we just get a empty string. So that shows that. We are now going to set a new variable, and this time we are going to go ahead and use our variable expansion, and it will equal to the same value as hi. So if we go ahead and echo hello, we see it also equals ah. So that is showing that that all works. Yeah, and now we will go over the code that makes this all possible. So let me just zoom out. All right, we find ourselves in the mysh.c script. So essentially, the way we store all of our variables is in this variable environment. And this variable environment is a global environment that we essentially import in every file we use it in. And if we go ahead into variables.h, we can see that it is simply a struct that holds a name, a value for the variable, and a pointer to the next variable. So essentially, our variable environment is a linked list so that we can store any amount of variables we want without ever running out of space, until obviously we exceed our actual system memory. But I doubt we will do anything close to that unless we set up a script. So in order to store into this, we are going to go down over here, and after we tokenize our input, we check if it uses a built-in, and storing a variable is not a built-in, it is its own thing. So we go down here, and if our token has an equal sign in it, then we know we need to store it as a variable. So what we're going to do is we're going to tokenize the input. We're going to take to the left of the equal sign as our name and to the right as our value. And now here comes the magic part of expansion. If we have a $sign in the value, we need to expand that. So we are going to tokenize it just to get rid of the $sign. And if we do have more than one $sign, then we have more than one variable to expand. So yeah. So we're going to go ahead and tokenize it based off of our $signs. And for each $sign, we are going to go ahead and get the value, and we are going to concatenate it to this temporary buffer that we have set up. And then we're going to move on to the next one and the next one until we're done with our $signs. Once we're done, we are going to go ahead and shorten our buffer so that we only include what we need. And we are going to go ahead and call setVar to set that variable. Otherwise, if we don't need the $signs, we just simply set var with our original value. Yeah. And now we're going to go into variables.c. and this is where the magic happens. So as you can see here, we have our setVar function, and it has like 2.5, 3 cases, I would say. So our first case is if our environment is empty. So if our environment is empty, then our name is going to be null. And what we are going to do when we want to set a variable is we're going to allocate some memory to our name, allocate some memory to our value, and we're going to copy the string of the name into the name of the variable, and same thing with our value, and we're going to set the next to null, and we're going to return 0, indicating that we made a new variable. All right, on to case 2 and 2.5 or 3, however you like to call it. So here is looping through the rest. So if we actually do have a thing, if we do actually have a variable inside of our environment, we are going to set our current to our environment, and we're going to go and check if that first one meets the name. If the first one has the same name as the one we passed in, we're just going to change the value. Otherwise, we are going to loop through, and we're going to check each name, compare it, and if we find it, we're going to copy the value and set it to the new one, and we're going to set found to 1 to show that we have altered a variable rather than created a new one. And if we get through the whole thing and we haven't found one, then we are going to set the next variable in the linked list. We're going to allocate it some space. We're going to allocate it some space for the name. We're going to copy the name, allocate space for the value, copy the value, and we're going to set next to null. Here's our simple get value, which is just grabbing the value, checking if it's equal, and then returning it. But yeah, and now we're going to go over the final thing, which is actually when we echo and we do our string, when we do our variable expansion, we actually do that on our tokenizing. So when we tokenize our input, essentially we check if it has a $sign in it, and if it does, then we do the exact same process with our buffer and our shortening for each delimited variable name, and we're going to add that to our buffer, and that's going to become our token. All right, we have gone through almost everything. So finally, we're just going to go over to our built-ins and look at our echo. And as you can see, we also have a buffer here. So love buffers. So this buffer is going to store our message up to 128 characters, with the last one being saved for a end string character. So as you see, we just simply add it to the buffer, concatenate it, and we set the last one to an end string character, and then we display our message. So that's going to stop us. Some pros and cons of this is, well, it kind of just ends the message abruptly, but some pros is that it definitely is the easiest to implement by far. So unfortunately, the user is going to have to simply deal with that. An alternative approach would be to actually tell the user that they are over and ask them to put in a new one or alter their previous input. But we are just going to stick with our little simple command there. And finally, to end off the video, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of storing our variables in a linked list. So when we store our variables in our linked list, we are essentially making sure that our space complexity is linear, so O of n, and our time complexity for making a new variable or grabbing is also O of n. So the pro is O of n space complexity. The con is definitely the O of n time complexity for fetching a variable. So if we use a dictionary in theory, which I did not want to implement as that is much more difficult, we could achieve O of 1 fetch time. However, the simplicity of implementing a linked list just outweighs the pros of O of 1 fetch time. So yeah, that is my program. I hope you guys like it. I hope you guys have a great day, and thank you for watching.